Clay has been in Dillon County 3 different times as county administrator. We keep pulling him back in, economic developer. He has, he lives at the beach now. He left us and went to Loris, and now he's not quite retired, but still doing a little bit of everything. But, yeah, he tells us that. He's kind of like James Locke, he doesn't know the word retire. And so anyway, Clay has done a book that I've known about for 10 years, but it's actually, he's worked on it for 20 years. And it's every courthouse in the state of South Carolina. But it's also a history book, because it tells you about the type of government, it tells you about the building, it tells you everything that you ever really can imagine. It's, he's worked on it for 20 years. I'm delighted to have him as our guest speaker today, and I'll turn it over to you. And he was my favorite yesterday.
You made me go with thank you for letting me come and speak today, Johnny, at the Rotary Club. I told my son Bridges I was coming to speak at the Rotary Club. Yeah, my son Bridges Young. And of course, he graduated from Latta High School, so he told me to give some money to the Latta Rotary Club for him. But, I was looking, when I was driving up this morning from the beach, and I went to the 250 meeting tent, and that was a enjoyable time. We'll get a lot of information about what's going on with that. But when I was driving up this morning, I guess like everybody, you're remiss about certain stuff, and I'm sitting here thinking, I know I've been to the Latta Rotary Club and given a speech somewhere between 18 and 20 times. So some years it was 1 year at a time, 1 year, and then some years it was twice. Depends on what was going on, if I was doing something with us.
So you didn't have any trouble finding us?
Yeah, I really didn't have a problem, because I live right down here, and right over here, Corky, and then right down the road, because I've had three different places here. But no, it really gives me a privilege to come here and speak at the Rotary Club. I always enjoyed coming here and giving an update when I was county administrator and all the different projects. But a project I started a couple of years, Johnny did a great job leading to it too, was that about 20 years ago, we were doing a project in Dillon. And some of y'all may remember, we were doing a landscape project, and we were taking down the old oak trees and redoing the courthouse grounds and stuff like that. And there was a lot of commotion going on with that, and how we should do it, what we should do, and stuff like that. So at that point, I decided, I said, before I get too far into this, and we're in the process of getting a landscape architect together, and of course Betsy, I know you remember, and all the stuff that went with that. Anyway, I started looking at stuff, and I started searching. I said, I knew we had a historic courthouse in Dillon, built by William Augustus Edwards, who was one of the premier architects in the state of South Carolina for building courthouses, along with Robert Mills and Mr. Preacher and some others out there. But anyway, to make a long story short on that, is that I thought, I was assured that somebody in South Carolina had done a courthouse done a book on the courthouse, South Carolina. So, me working in different parts of the state, different stuff in different courthouses, I said, well, so I'll just call Association of Counties. So I called Association of Counties. And I asked him, I said, can you send me a book on someone who did a book on the courthouse, South Carolina? I was really looking at it from the standpoint, what was the traffic patterns? How did they deal with parking? What type of trees did they put in? And stuff like that. Just trying to get an idea. I wasn't really looking at all the architectural stuff and all that. And they said, that's a good question. Nobody's ever done a book on that. They said, we do. So we do have pictures of courthouses, but they're dated. He said, we may have taken one this year, we may have taken one 10 years ago, but we've never really had, a book on the courthouse. I said, I didn't think a lot about it. And so then I called Archives and History up in Columbia and asked them the same thing. And they said, no, we've got a lot of information, but it's never been put together. And I said, well, okay, well, it's interesting. So I started going around, just because that project was started, I started going around to the different courthouses around here. So I went to Marion, of course, I went to Marlboro and stuff like that. And unbeholden to me to a certain extent, I didn't know that they had one in Lee County. William Augustus Edwards built a courthouse. Not similar, because William Augustus Edwards, if you read more about him, he built different courthouses. They looked alike in some ways, but then they were also different in a lot of aspects. So anyway, that got me going, looking at. So over the next couple of years, whenever I went and saw my parents in Columbia, or if they were in Charleston, or if I went and saw my family in Chester and Rock Hill, and then Fitzhugh, who's one of my good friends, Fitzhugh and Sharita, they took me to a Clemson football game. Of course, I'm a Gamecock fan, but I still went to the Clemson football game. But I would go take pictures, and I started collecting pictures of courthouses and stuff. So anyway, getting back to, and I started collecting all this information with courthouse pictures and stuff like that, a little bit of history about the courthouses. And my idea was just to have a little small book about half this size with just the current courthouse and maybe the current city hall and a little bit of history on that, just to help the other city and county managers around South Carolina. So I started out doing that. And so hadn't really never done a book before, and talked to some different people, and I called the University of South Carolina, and it was in the summertime and nobody was there. So I called
Clemson.
I called Clemson, and nobody was
there.
but it was summertime, so everybody was basically on leave or whatever. So it was in middle of June to the end of June, and a lot of people were gone. And so somebody said, "Well, just call it College Charleston." So I looked up the College Charleston, and I looked on there, and they do have a 4-year degree in historic preservation at College Charleston. So I said, "Well, this would be great." So I called that department. Well, guess what? The person that I wanted to talk to, the gentleman I wanted to talk to, he was on leave in Europe. And so he wouldn't be back till August or September. So I came home and I thought about it. So I called back and said, "Well, let me talk to somebody in the history department at College Charleston." And so I called back, and they said, "A lot of people are on leave, but they did find one person named Rita Livingston who also helped me put the book together." And so I went down and I told Rita what I was doing, and she said, "Well, come on down to the College Charleston, and we'll meet at the library at the College Charleston. We'll see what you got, see what we can do." So I came down and we got that stuff together. Anyway, came down and met with her, and we talked about it, and we said, "Yeah, we'll do this little book, and we'll put together what you got, and if we need some additional pictures, we'll end up going around taking some additional pictures and this and that, whatever, and trying to put something together." Was the more we dug into the process, and the more we I went to every county in South Carolina over 12 years, probably 10 or 15 times, and talked with different historical people and different stuff and different meetings if I was in Columbia or Charleston. And I kept coming back to the same thing, and some of the things that College Charleston would read, being one of his professors at College Charleston. So why don't we do a book on the courthouse of South Carolina? So I said, "Well, okay, that can't be too bad." I had no idea how much work this was going to be, because there was no one place to go get the information. So we literally split it up, and one of the persons that did help too is on the back of the book. I don't know if y'all know Jane Crawford. Jane Crawford Singh. She's from Dillon. I know Betsy. Mm-hmm. She did some of the graphic art. She helped some too, along with a lot of other people, which I keep doing everybody to help me. But I had to go to every county in South Carolina and collect the information from their local historians, and that was a feat within itself. And I did learn another thing is that when you take pictures of courthouses, you can only go on a Saturday or Sunday, because if you try to go during the week, as LaFawn knows, you got people moving around, and so you can't take pictures. So if you're going to take pictures of a courthouse, I'll give you some advice: go on Saturday or Sunday. But the thing with that is you got to make sure the weather's right. So if it's a cloudy day, you can't go. If it's raining, you can't go. If it's snowing, you can't go. You can only go certain times of the year. The Anderson Courthouse, which I took it so many times, and I hated the picture, and I never could get it right. And finally, I went up there one day, and this guy was sitting there, and I started putting a ladder in my car, and I put the ladder down, and he said, "You can only take this courthouse between 2 and 3 o'clock or a certain time and a certain time of the year." I said, "Really?" Yeah, I said, "Why do you?" I said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Because I've tried to do this over the last 5 years, and this is the only way it works." only knowingly he was correct. Because when I went up there and did it during this time, it worked on that too. But the thing that really got me about this book here too is that what we ended up doing was when we did the courthouse. Of course, we picked. Does anybody know this courthouse here?
At the corner of the law in Charleston?
Yep. It's the four corners of law in Charleston. It's Charleston County. Used to be the Charleston County Courthouse. Now Charleston County's got a judicial center, which is in North Charleston. This is the one that's downtown. I actually worked in that courthouse. One of the first jobs I had in county government, I actually worked in that courthouse. So that courthouse meant a lot to me. It was also where the site was the first state capitol was in South Carolina. So that's one of the reasons why we picked the Charleston County, this particular courthouse here. And of course, it's been renovated, even since this picture here. But getting back, as we kept looking at the book and we kept adding stuff, we soon found out that the book ended up, if you take the book and you look at the book and you go through the first introduction of the book, which talks about the actual architects, Robert Mills and the other architects that were prevalent in South Carolina, you'll come to the table of contents. And the reason I show this is important because the table of contents shows all the counties, all 46 counties in South Carolina, from Abbeville all the way to York County. And it shows you, that part of there. When we started doing the book, before you could write about the courthouses, you needed to tell about the county. So you needed to tell how the county got started, who was the, how did the county get going? Was it named after somebody? How did it get going? And then certain counties were created, early on, and then, later counties were created, like Dillon was one of the fewer counties that were created in the 1900s, early 1900s. And the way we ended up with the process is, I thought we were going to start out and just do a book on the courthouses, which we did. And so if you look at this book, it says South Carolina's county courthouses. But if you read the book, it's technically a history book on the state of South Carolina, because it explains how the county got started, how South Carolina. And most of y'all in here knows that South Carolina started out in Charleston, and came from the Charleston, grew out from Charleston. But then as it started growing around out into the state of South Carolina, other people started moving in from other parts of the country, all over the world, really. From some areas started moving into the state of South Carolina. When that happened, the first thing they wanted was law and order. And so they started requesting that South Carolina build them a courthouse, and along with a jail. Because if you were in Spartanburg, or you were in Union, or somewhere like that, and somebody, I hate to say it, stole your horses or stole something from you, they wanted some type of repercussions. They wanted some type of law and order. So in county government, it's a fairly new process. When you look at county government in South Carolina, whenever people in Charleston and South Carolina started expanding out, they built judicial districts. And so we didn't have county government. It started out as judicial districts throughout South Carolina. It wasn't until after 1865 with the new Constitution in 1898 that they actually created county government. But some of y'all remember probably in this room here, county government before 1975, Home Rule Act, they had one senator per county. And the senator basically was, whoever the senator was in that particular county pretty much ran the county government, what we call county government at that time, and they would supply an old supply bill. Harold Cornblade, I know you remember. They'd all make the old supply bill and do a budget and submit it to the state legislature, and the state legislature would approve it or not approve it, most of the time they did. And then that basically ran county government. And in 1975, with the passage of the Home Rule Act, they created county government basically the way we run county government today. So we got away from the legislature and got into now where county council basically runs the counties from that. But the counties were formed from the judicial districts. So if you go back and look at the history of South Carolina, you can see where county government came from judicial districts. based on law and order people back in the day. And so therefore, that's why we broke it out by counties. And you can read this book, and one little side story, and I know I got time limit, but one little side story is there's about 4 or 5 counties, I don't want to get into it, there's 4 or 5 counties in South Carolina. And when I started doing this book here, and along with Rita Livingston and some other people helped me, is that I went to a couple of counties, and I'm not going to name one county, but anyway, I went to a county that was close to Columbia. I'm going to leave it at that. And I went in there with the book, and it says, "Oh, this is the history." I'm going to tell you, this is Lexington County. I went in there and I said, "This is the history of Lexington County. This is the book." First thing the historian says, the book is not totally inaccurate, but it's not a complete story of the way it should be told. I said, "What do you mean? This is a book on Lexington County." And same thing with Greenville County. I work with a lot of good college professors throughout South Carolina. A.V. Huff, who is one of the professors at Furman University, sent me a lot of information. He wrote 2 or 3 books on Greenville County, and even talking with him, he sent me some information. He said, "I wrote 2 books on Greenville County, but I don't think I did it correctly." So we went back and we started. There's about 4 or 5 counties in here that you may see a little bit of change if you actually picked up a book on a particular county. It's a little bit of change. It's not a dramatic change, but we found out that. And I'll give you an example, for instance, if you look at some of these counties, even like Lexington, the person that wrote Lexington County was from Richland County. Because back 100 years ago or more, some of these counties like Lexington were what they call the backwoods. And so therefore, it's not like it is today, which Lexington County is a very prosperous county. So the person from Richland County probably just didn't go into the detail that they normally would, because that was considered the backwoods. And he said, "Hey, nobody read it. There's backwoods people, they don't read it," or whatever it is. Right? So, but there was 4 or 5 counties in South Carolina which we changed a little bit in there, changed the history on that too. But we finally got the book together. Last couple of years, I really spent as much of my time probably working on the book then too. And as I collected information, and what kind of threw me a little curveball was every time I'd get some of the counties, I'd get about half finished, and then all of a sudden Darlington County would build a new courthouse. So I had to go rewrite that section, you know what I mean? Or somebody else would do a renovation to the courthouse. And so it finally got to a point where probably about a year ago, about this time last year, finally just said, "Look, we need to cut it off. We need to go ahead and go with what we've got." And so most of it, I know there's probably a couple of courthouses in here. There's been some renovation done to them, but more or less, this is pretty much the courthouses that are currently out there today. So if you're looking for a book on the history of South Carolina, read it. And the thing is looking at a book on the courthouses. This is every courthouse we could ever find that was ever built in South Carolina. Now, I'm sure I'm going to go somewhere and somebody's going to read one of the chapters and say, "Well, this and that, whatever," and come up with a courthouse that I may not have found. But all the Robert Mills courthouses, all the William Augustus Edwards courthouses, all the courthouses that were done, after the 1700s was pretty much in this book. And this is based on a lot of research that was done in every county in South Carolina. So it's not just I just didn't go to one thing, and all that part there too. But it's turned out. And we did the book, we started out, like I said, with the book, it was about half the size. But then when you do half the size, you can't see the pictures. And then you can't see, and then everything's small. And so I said, if I'm going to go to this extent, and I wanted to, of course, I put Dillon on the back.
And we have 8 pages of the book.
So I did put Dillon County on the back. But, I wanted it big enough, and also if you look at the book, and you can see that the font is a lot bigger. It's not necessarily that I did the font bigger was because I got glasses on, reading glasses on. It's because a lot of people like bigger font. When they sit down and read, not necessarily, they like to read bigger font, and the kids like to read bigger font. I mean, I think when I had some of the kids, we had some kids look at it, and like all elementary and high school kids, we had them look at it. They liked it too. And then also too, we did a little thing in here, which is a little bit like Hampton County. That's the Buster Murdoch and Alex Murdoch. It's kind of unusual that I returned to Hampton because I really didn't either. This is where I first started out as a county administrator in Hampton County when I was 28 years old. I was the county administrator in Hampton County, and I knew the Murdoch family very well. Very well. I was there about 3.5, 4 years. But one of the things in here that I thought was good too, if you take every county when you open it up, and I know you can't see this, but it's a picture of the state of South Carolina, and it's broken out by counties. Well, it's highlighted over here in Hampton where it is in part of the state. Because a lot of people, when they look at a book like this, they'll go, okay, well, where is Hampton County compared to where it is in the state of South Carolina? That's why I wanted to put that little map in there to show where it is. Because a lot of people don't know where every county is in South Carolina and how it is. But I think it's a good read. It's a non-political book. It's all about how the county got started, who was the county named after, who were the players, who were the people that got it going. It talked a lot about the Civil War. It talked a little bit about the different aspects of how the book, how the county changed based on certain situations. So it's a good read. I'm happy I was able to get it done. It's a project that I've kind of labored over for a long period of time. I know my two sons, Bridget and Josh, and I'm sure they're tired of talking to me about running all over the state here and there, whatever I could on the weekends and holidays, to take certain pictures on that too, and forcing them to ride in the car with me sometimes, back in the day. But it turned out really better than I thought it was going to turn out in a lot of aspects. It's a really good book. I do finally got it for sale. I finally got it. I'll be at the South Carolina Bar Conference tomorrow. It's the South Carolina Bar Conference is in Savannah, Georgia. Not going there. Leave that. Georgia's coming to South Carolina, so hopefully that's a reciprocal thing. So, but I'll be leaving tomorrow to go to Savannah, Georgia, with the South Carolina Bar Association. Governor Masters already got a copy. He's read it for 2 or 3 months now. It's at a lot of libraries and stuff around South Carolina. It's at the University of South Carolina Law School Library. It's at the Richland County Library. A lot of people have helped me put the book together. I got copies too. They bought copies of different places like that too. So we're slowly rolling it out, and I'm happy to be here. This is my first Rotary Club. I get to actually talk about the book. But,
Who published it?
Huh?
Who published it?
I had a publishing company, Porter Publishing Company out of Maryland, was actually the actual company that actually was the publishing company, and then I used Phrygians, which is actually put the book together. But this book was a lot more complicated to put together because of its size and the clarity of the pictures and stuff like that, and how we did it. So it took a little longer than what I anticipated it took, and a little bit more expense than what I thought it was going to expense too. But,
available on Amazon?
huh?
You got it on Amazon?
Not yet, but I've got information. I've got some information here on it here too. Got some information here. If you want to QR code, it's on that
Get a
too.
signed copy
Get
today.
a signed copy today, and $10 less than what if you order it online.
Yeah.
So version 1.
Yeah,
Is
signed.
there a push for it to be part of the South Carolina history curriculum in schools or anything?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, and they have reached out to me to be a part of it because it's a read that basically even junior high or elementary school kids at a certain level of elementary school, especially high school, definitely high school kids, can read the book, and it's a great historical book and from the history of South Carolina. So a lot of people are looking at that. A lot of schools are looking at those types of situations. A lot of libraries have like Richland County Library has got one in their library, South Carolina room, and they use it as one of their reference materials.
All
Think
three
it's
of
a
our
little easier to read
libraries
than Walter Edwards?
All three. Do what?
think it's a little easier to read than Walter Edwards' history.
That's a tough book to read.
It is.
Yeah. This book here is, I use Walter Ecker's book as a reference book, you know, his encyclopedia book, which is.
Right, that's about what it is.
About this size here. This is a little bit, gives you a little bit more detail. Gives you a lot more detail about how the county got started, and it also has got the information about the
Been overloaded with information.
And also, one other final thing is that we also, I did do one on the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals that are in the back too. So it's complete. At first, we first started out, and we wasn't going to do the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals. But then after talking with them, we added the Court of Appeals, the history of the Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court to the back. So it's complete from the court.
Didn't the Supreme Court move sometime like in '70 to where it is right now?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you're right.
I feel like I was
The
just wondering at the time that happened.
The Supreme Court was supposed to move to the Calhoun building
Right.
because they were in the legislature. They were part of the state house, and they were supposed to move to the Calhoun building, but they never would move. So they wouldn't move. So finally, in a number of years later, in the 80s or whatever, in the 70s and 80s, they bought the post office, which was across the street from the Capitol, and that's when they bought the courthouse. I mean, the old post office, and they redid the post office.
Senate Street.
Yeah. And then also the Court of Appeals, when it was created in the 1980s, they moved the Court of Appeals to the Calhoun building, where the Supreme Court was supposed to be located. So, and that's another great story too. It's a great story out there too. Any other questions you have for me? I know how time is. Yeah. Yes.
What was the last courthouse for last county for?
I think it was McCormick, I believe, or Dillon too. Dillon and McCormick were some of the last ones for it.
I think Lee County was.
Lee County was the last one because Lee County was, they had it all approved. And then Darlington appealed. It said the vote wasn't legal, which I think it was, but I mean, they said it wasn't. They actually kicked them out, and you're right, Lee County ended up being the last one because they were supposed to be a county 4 years earlier, but anyway, Darlington was able to challenge it It's a good read. I think, like I said, if you got any questions, most people in here know where I'm at and know how to get in touch with me. So call me if you've got any questions or any issues like that too.
And could they pay with cash, check, or card?
Cash check your card. I even
I
got
saw
it.
your little thing right here.
Yeah, that's right. I can take a credit card too.
How about that?
Card, and so, we'll get you signed some of these before folks leave.
I'm gonna move drinks off this table.
Yeah, I'd be glad to sign anything. If you want me to sign one, I'd be glad to do
Okay,
that.
and if you can pull our winning ticket with Donna, y'all get your tickets out.